With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hey guys, Justin here from Overtime Hockey Talk coming at you. Flying solo today on a Sunday afternoon. It is gorgeous outside. Unfortunately, the show must go on, and so Mark is a little under the weather, but you know what? I'm here, the one you truly came to see. Let me kick things off by saying, obviously, today is a special day in the hockey world. Alexander Ovechkin, goal 895, passes Wayne Gretzky, the great one. What more is there to say? I can just say, honestly, I tip my cap to that man. It's a record I never thought would actually be broken. We know when Gretzky broke Howe's record at 802. I was a little young for that, didn't get to see it live, but watching it, what it meant to the hockey world, and of course, now with Ovechkin passing Gretzky here, it's crazy to think that even with a broken leg this season, I thought this guy wasn't coming back. He wasn't going to do the rec. He wasn't going to break the record this year, right? But still managed to, currently is sitting number 2 in the NHL in goals scored. Something to say there at age 39. This guy is a machine. He does not stop. Again, Alexander Ovechkin, congratulations. We know TNT should have had Overtime Hockey Talk congratulating you on the air over that big dedication they had during the celebration when you scored against the Islanders. But you know what? We're here. You can watch the podcast. You can get the congratulations from me personally. Again, Alexander Ovechkin, number 1 goal scorer in the NHL. It is unreal. This guy is something else. I can still remember when he broke into the league, that tinted visor he had, it was crazy to see. And of course, I remember that goal against the Phoenix Coyotes where he was on his back and basically put the puck behind his back, just laying flat on the ice. I knew we were in for a special player here for his career. Glad to see the record broken. These are the sort of things that are meant to be broken, and it's nice it couldn't happen to a better guy. Alexander Ovechkin, now we'll see who can maybe top him in the next 20, 30 years. I know Gretzky's record held for roughly 30 years. We'll see what happens in the NHL. I think if my money's on anybody currently in the NHL, right, I think I'd have to go Austin Matthews. This guy is a machine as well, and obviously he knows how to score some goals. We'll see what we can get out of him over the next 15 years. And then, of course, Alexander Ovechkin, who knows if this guy's going to shoot for 1,000 goals, right? At 39, he's still going 40-plus goals, and it's not crazy to think that maybe he could go a few more years and put up another 25, 30 goals a season here, potentially hit 1,000, which would be just insane to think about. But if anybody can do it, I guess it's him, right? He is Russian. Those Russians tend to, like, I'm sure he probably has dreams of maybe going back to KHL in the next couple of years and finishing out his career there. So we'll see what happens. But either way, the record's been broken, and Alexander stands atop the mountain, number 1 overall in goals scored. So congratulations again. But reason we're here, reason you're here is we have a show to do. So today, again, just flying solo, I wanted to provide you one with a little bit of content, but something I've been wanting to do for a while now. And I know Mark and I, we typically do a lot of our top 10 lists during the summer. And we have these types of shows where maybe they're not surrounded by the current events going on in the NHL. With Mark out today, I figured I'd give a crack at one that's been on my mind recently, and that's an NHL redraft. When I was watching the Red Wings last night, Patrick Kane, right, he obviously drafted number 1 overall, and I think of Alexander Ovechkin being drafted first overall, and got me thinking, have there been drafts where guys have been number 1, number 2 overall and really have been, I don't want to say stinkers, right, but maybe a team had an opportunity to draft again, knowing what they know now, would they still choose that same player? We can poke fun at Neil Yakupov for the next 15 years, but there's other drafts. And so I put a few out of the last 15 years in my hat, picked one out and came out with the 2011 draft. I thought that'd be a great place to start here with a redraft. And I'm only doing the top 15. I think once you get a little past that, it gets a little subjective. And to be quite honest, we've talked about Ovechkin, and so I want to keep this show a little short here, maybe 15, 20 minutes, just to go through each one of these picks here and just give a quick reason why I think, again, this would be a great pick for each team. And basically what I did is, again, just taking into account what this player has done throughout their career up to this point, and not necessarily weighing in the team needs at the time, right? Because we know in the 2011 draft, the Edmonton Oilers get the first pick, and obviously they needed everything, right? So they were drafting pretty much anything and everything. They would take the best player available, obviously. They got a whole ton of number 1 picks around that time. For me, it was more or less just necessarily if if I was the team's GM and had all the information in front of me over the last, 14 years of their careers, what they've been able to produce, what they've accomplished, and who would I pick at this point? Just to jump right in, obviously, we're going to start with the number one overall pick and go from there. And that is the Edmonton Oilers. We know they took Nuge. They took Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, number one overall. But for me, he slides a little bit in this draft. And so at number one, I think it's no surprise, but I've got Nikita Kucherov drafted first overall in this draft. He is an amazing player. Obviously, we know what he's done over the last 5-6 years. This guy's been just unreal. If there's any other Russian player, I think, in the NHL that we think about outside of Alexander Ovechkin, it's Nikita Kucherov, right? He is the top dog right now. He is putting up 100-point seasons like no one's business. And of course, he's got a couple cups to go with it. He's got the hardware. He's got everything that you can pretty much ask for out of a player. So for me, again, I know centermen tend to go a little earlier, but for me, obviously, this is a no-brainer. I'm taking Kucherov, and who knows, had they maybe taken him number one overall, and you imagine him playing with a guy like Leon Draisaitl or even Connor McDavid, boy, we might see a few 150-point seasons out of these guys. It would be crazy to think about that possibility, that partnership that could form. For me, number one overall, Nikita Kucherov. And then moving on to number two, the Colorado Avalanche. I think this is the only pick where I just looked at this draft and I said, you know what? I'm staying the course. I'm picking the same guy. It's Gabriel Landeskog at number two for me in the Avs. This guy obviously is a huge leader for this team. We know what he did in the playoffs. He's been a machine. Obviously, we've had a couple, let's just say down seasons, right, where he's been injured. We still don't know what we're going to get out of him. He might be back for the playoffs. He might not. But outside of this injury, I think what he's given to this team, the leadership, the hard hits, the points, he can do it all, right? And as a winger, a captain, he's somebody I think any team in the NHL would love to have on their team and lead their squads. I think this is a no-brainer. And of course, there's some talent, right? This is subjective. There's a lot of other talent on this list that I think maybe you could look at and say, yeah, you know what? I would prefer a centerman over a winger. But again, number one and number two, taking a couple wingers. But you know what? I got to say that the Avs got their cup. They got what they needed out of Landeskog. And of course, the rest of the crew there. Easy no-brainer for me, Colorado Avalanche picking Gabriel Landeskog. All right, and moving on to number three, we've got the Florida Panthers. Obviously, they took Jonathan Huberdeau with this pick, and again, that's a great pick. But for me, there's a few other players on this list that I think I would prefer to take. Obviously, finding a number one centerman is a hard thing to do in the NHL. No knock on Huberdeau. He obviously had his 100-point year. He had some really good seasons with Barkov playing on his left side. But for me, I'm taking Mark Scheifele here. And really, again, it comes down to finding a number one centerman. Now, again, this is not part of the draft, is not looking at what the team needs, right? Obviously, Sasha Barkov is an excellent number one center, but when you look at potential 1-2 punch of Barkov and Scheifele, that's just dangerous. That's sick. That's a dream, right? I think outside of McDavid and Draisaitl, Crosby and Malkin, this would be obviously, I think, the best 1-2 punch down the middle in the NHL if we're looking at that kind of a pick at number three here. So for the Florida Panthers, Mark Scheifele coming in at number three. And then at number four, the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, they took a defenseman here with Adam Larson, but for me, I'm still sticking with the center position. Now, this player, I do say center position. He can play center, but he can also play on the wing as well. I think he's very versatile in that sense. And of course, this guy is just a beast when it comes to just going 110%. Obviously, we know he has his moments where he doesn't look like he's going through the motions, right? He's just out there skating and not really giving it his all. But his body of work, I think, speaks for itself. And I think in the right circumstances, he's a very talented player. And again, one I would still love to have on my team at this point in his career, and that's JT Miller. So Miller, of course, we know the exit out of Vancouver, but I think outside of that, the lackluster play or the disagreements, whatever you want to call it, the culture fit, the locker room fit, whatever it may have been that led to his exit there, I'm not going to hold that against him because he's still a tremendous player. He seemed to have fit very well with the Rangers again. Obviously, his second stint there, the New Jersey Devils, right? He doesn't have to travel too far. He can hang out across the pond, right across the river there in New Jersey. And so the Devils get themselves just a tremendous forward here. And again, if you think about it, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, they would love to have a guy like this on the wing. And I think they tried that with Timo Meier a little bit, but it, to me, just hasn't really worked out as well as a guy like I think JT Miller would have. So easy pick at number 4, JT Miller. And then at number 5, the New York Islanders. I'm sticking with a winger here. For me, it's a guy who, I think there's been a lot said about him this season, and I think he is just he was a fantastic player in this league. And there's not much more I can say that we already haven't said on this show, but that's Johnny Hockey. This guy was a tremendous skater, always going 110% every single time he was out on the ice. And we know why Columbus wanted him. We know why half the league wanted him, and those who could afford him anyways, a couple of years ago during free agency. And of course, it's tragic to see what's happened. And even knowing that, I still think the years you did get out of Johnny Hockey, I think for the New York Islanders, they would love to get a player like that. And who knows, maybe things would have been different, obviously, but that's neither here nor there. This guy was just an absolute beast of a hockey player. Love to see him. Wish the Red Wings had gotten him when he was out there in free agency, but it is what it is. So the Islanders drafting at number 5 get Johnny Hockey. And then moving on to number 6, the Ottawa Senators. For me, I think they stick with a defenseman here. I know, again, needs be damned. But to me, I think when I look at this list of players that were drafted here, this guy stands, I think, above the rest as far as defensemen are concerned. There weren't a lot of high-end, superstar talented defensemen in this draft, but this guy, I'm sure you probably already figured it out by now, but Dougie Hamilton, right? We know what he's done on the back end. He's a tremendous offensive player, and he can still bring it defensively every single night. The New Jersey Devils are definitely missing him right now, but for me, the Ottawa Senators, I think, would love to add a piece like this. And you think with a guy like Thomas Chabot, or even some of the other defensemen they've had run through there over the last few years, Erik Karlsson, Jacob Chychrun, guys that they've lost, this would be another one of those guys that I think they would love to have had, or still have if they had drafted him right on their roster. Coming in at number 6 for me is Dougie Hamilton. And then moving on to number 7, the Winnipeg Jets, again, I think needs be damned at the time. But for me, I'm going centerman here. We know back in 2011, obviously, maybe they didn't have as much talent down the center position. But of course, they obviously ended up with Mark Scheifele at this point. But for me, I'm still sticking with centerman. And Mika Zibanejad is where I'm going to with this pick. He obviously started his career with the Ottawa Senators, so still up there in Canada. But for me, I think the Jets get just a beast of a goal scorer, a guy who maybe last year has tailed off a little bit. And we'll see if maybe next year what happens with the New York Rangers, and obviously him there with JT Miller now. We'll see if maybe they can't revive or revamp, just to reignite that goal scoring that Mika Zibanejad can still bring to the NHL. And I think he's still well capable of doing so. For me, at number 7, the Winnipeg Jets get Mika Zibanejad. And then at number 8, the Philadelphia Flyers. So I know I've already mentioned this guy's name before, and he's probably, I would have to just double check it, but outside of Kucherov, he's the only other player here with a 100-point season. And again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Just off the top of my head, I can't honestly remember if a guy like, I think JT Miller got close with 99 points, and I can't remember if Scheifele has had one. I don't think so, but feel free again to correct me if I'm wrong. But for the Philadelphia Flyers, number 8, I've got Jonathan Huberdeau. So again, this is a guy who's a very talented winger. We know now, just maybe watching him in Calgary, he's lost a step or two, but I think this season he's looked much, much better than he has in his previous years in Calgary. And I think if they can find him maybe a talented centerman here in the next year or two to play with, I think Calgary's got a real good shot of still keeping that 80, 90-point pace I think he's very capable of. He is definitely an assist machine, right? He needs somebody to feed the puck to. He's not going to score you 40, 50 goals. He is a guy who can dish it as good as anybody else in the NHL. And that's why I say he needs a good centerman, a guy like Mark Scheifele who can score some goals. For me, at number 8, the Philadelphia Flyers get a tremendous player, but again, an assist machine in Jonathan Huberdeau.
This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going. But that just means there's time for your favorite things to figure it out, and games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings.com and the Sportsbook app, select your team, place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers get $5 to get, or bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPNEY or text HOPNEY 888-467-4369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the NHL, of the National Hockey League. NHL and NHL team marks are the property of the NHL and its teams. Copyright NHL 2025, all rights reserved.
And speaking of assist machine, I've got another guy who's been feeding the puck for the Edmonton Oilers for quite some time now. And at number 9 for the Boston Bruins, they are going to pick Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Now, this is a kid who I think is a little bit underrated, gets a lot of I guess you could say he gets less ice time, right, than maybe he would on any other team, right? Other teams, I think he could easily be a number 1, number 2 center. But when you're playing behind McDavid and Draisaitl, a lot of times you're sitting back in that 3C spot. And then, of course, he does get some time on that PP1. But again, at number 9, I don't think this is a bad spot for him to fall. And I don't think the guys in front of him are any worse or he's any worse than those guys. I just think, again, if I had my choice, I think I would take the players in front of him first. But again, for the Boston Bruins, they would love to get a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, right? This would be an ideal player for them to come in and eventually replace a guy like Baptiste Bergeron. At the time, David Krejci as well. This would be just a cornerstone piece right now. I think he would obviously be their number 1C in front of a guy like Elias Lindholm. Boston Bruin fans would not be upset about that right now. Again, at number 9, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And at number 10, Minnesota Wild. Obviously, I think if you've watched any of the shows this year and last year, the one thing I've said they've needed more than anything else over the past couple of years has been a number 1C, right? And obviously, they've been hamstringed by the cap hits of Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. And obviously, now we're gonna see a little cap relief. So maybe now with the cap going up next year, they don't have those cap hits on hand. We'll see what they can do talent-wise. Maybe they make a move, or maybe they continue to go with Marco Rossi in the number 1 center spot. But for me, I think this guy could easily, be a number 1 center for them right now currently, and that's Vincent Trocheck. We know what he's been doing in New York. I think he's a tremendous leader. I think that's probably his most underrated aspect of his game is his leadership ability. When you talk to guys, and I think I read at the time when they were looking at trading for JT Miller and possibly Elias Pettersson and rumors of somebody else going out to shake things up when the Rangers weren't doing so hot a couple months ago, they talked about a guy like Vincent Trocheck, and everybody in the locker room was verbal about how much of a leader he was in that locker room and how if anybody deserved to see it would be this guy. So for me, it's a no-brainer. I think this is a guy, again, if you put him a little higher on this list, I would probably not object, maybe outside of my top 3-4 picks, but anywhere else on this list, I would be absolutely perfectly fine with him coming in at number 8, number 9. But the Minnesota Wild would love to get a guy like this. And again, at number 10, I've got Vincent Trocheck. And then moving on to the number 11, and I know goalies are the hardest position to evaluate, right, pre-draft, and it's very difficult and very rare that we often see goalies go higher than the top 10. So coming in at number 11, I think, is a perfect spot for a goalie to finally pop in on my list, and that's Jonathan Gibson. And I know a lot of you are going to probably say, what about Jordan Binnington? He's got the cup. Don't worry. He's in my list a little bit further down. But for me, Jonathan Gibson, I just personally as a goaltender, I like his talent. I like his, I guess you could say, intangibles, maybe a little bit more than Jonathan Binnington or Jordan Binnington, I'm sorry. And Jordan Binnington was obviously tremendous in that cup run that he had. But for me, when I look at overall skill, I think he's a guy, Gibson, who has higher end talent and ability. He's just been, let's just say, unfortunately put on a few terrible Anaheim Ducks teams over the last few years. And you gotta think, for 3, 4, 5 years when you're playing at the bottom of the league, what that does to you mentally, because we know goaltending is, in my opinion, it's 90% mental. When you're at the bottom of the league and constantly losing all the time, it's hard to go out there and put up your A game. And I think now we're starting to see a little resurgence, right? The Ducks are playing much, much better hockey lately, right? Those youngsters like Leo Carlson, Troy Terry, they're starting to carry the team a little bit more and starting to play a game that I think benefits of goaltenders. Right now, I think we're starting to see the goaltender maybe he once was. And so hopefully there's still a little bit more left in the tank and a little bit more in his career. But the Colorado Avalanche, obviously, I think would be absolutely fine coming out of the draft with a guy like Jonathan Gibson and Gabriel Landeskog in their top 11 pick, or their 2 top picks in the top 11 of this draft. So we know Philip Grubauer was the goalie in their cup run, but trust me, I think it would have gone a lot better had they had a guy like Jonathan Gibson in the net for them. Moving on to number 12, my second defenseman on this list, I've got Jonas Brodin. So obviously the Carolina Hurricanes, we know what they've done and what he's been able to do for this team. Yeah, so for me, Jonas Brodin comes in at number 12 for the Carolina Hurricanes, and they've obviously been fortunate enough to have a lot of quality defensemen coming through the years. Again, adding another one to the roster is never a bad thing. And then at number 13, I'm just going to wrap this up pretty quick here. At number 13, I've got Jordan Binnington. I've talked about him, his intangibles. I do think, again, he is a quality goaltender and one that I don't think any team would hate to have. The Calgary Flames would love to get their hands on this guy. Obviously, they had a lot of fortunate goaltenders come through the ranks throughout the years, and so why not add another one? At number 13, Jordan Binnington. At number 14, the Dallas Stars. I've got Sean Couturier. This is again, it's not a bad pick. When you're picking this in the middle of the draft, right, you're obviously missing 1 or 2 pieces from being a contender at this point when you're drafting at 14, 15. So to get a guy like Sean Couturier who can play both ends of the ice, bring a lot of leadership, tenacity, this is a guy from me who I would not hesitate to put on my roster. And then finishing off at number 15, the New York Rangers. Again, I think they've got a couple really good centermen on their roster right now, but why not add another one? And that's William Karlsson. We know he's had a 40-goal season. Why not get another goal-scoring center like Mika Zibanejad to this roster? And of course, obviously, things might have been different with the Golden Knights had they not had this guy on their roster during their cup runs. William Karlsson is obviously a piece that I think a lot of teams would love to have center one of their top lines. So again, at number 15, that is the pick for me. That's the show. Obviously, a little bit shorter today without Mark. Make sure you check us out on Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. And of course, we will be back and talking with you soon. So take care. And again, congratulations, Alexander Ovechkin.